Hey, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this May 11th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening, from Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Time on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. They also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, and if you can't catch either of those two shows, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com, arcticbeacon.com. Today I want to continue playing a presentation by a friend of mine and a guy who I've had on my show many times in the years past. He's written two very concise and small books called The Secret Terrorists and The Enemy Unmasked. And I recommend that you Google that if you haven't read it and check it out. Very concise, very short. You can read it in an hour or two, but you can go back and get a lot of that information. I go back and look at some of the chapters periodically over the last, I don't know, started reading this book 10 years ago. And I found it to be a concise book that gives you a good outline of what you need to research. Now, when I read this book, it tied together a lot of things for me that I had experienced personally when I worked in Rome, and then when I started to piece together what I call the Vatican-led New World Order. Bill was one of the people I wanted to get on my show back when I told my listeners that this was a story, the biggest story untold uh, right now in America. Although, if you go back and look at people that have talked about the Vatican involvement in the New World Order, or call it the Old World Order, you see it's nothing really new. Many people in the past, when there wasn't such a clampdown on information, had told people to beware of this beast and the takeover of your country. They've done it in the past in many, many other countries, and in modern times with U.S. support. And it's a clandestine operation. It's a duplicit. It's so despicable that many people can't quite believe that it's true. But let me tell you, Hitler did say, and he's a Vaticanite himself, that the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. Look at what's happening here in our presidential elections. Although I've always said, no matter if you get two serious guys or women running for office, it's all a theater. It's all a stage. It just depends on what type of show you're looking at. In the past, they presented the theater in a very serious, issue-oriented manner, where Americans could either go left or go right on the issues, and this was I called it a drama, a very serious debate. Well, we have today I call a comedy going on. They're now switching the theatrical performance and making it more, what would you say, idiotic. Yes, it's a comedy of errors going on in the presidential election. So, when I see Donald Trump, he's called everybody, and he's nicknamed everybody. Crooked Hillary, Crazy Bernie, Lying Ted Cruz, etc., etc. Oh, he called Elizabeth Warren Goofy Elizabeth. Now, what this means, most people say, how could this go on? Well, I kind of look at it and laugh because I know they're putting on a performance. And the performance has now gotten into the absurd. And so the question becomes, why are they doing this? There has to be an end game here because Donald Trump just doesn't come out of the clear blue sky. A billionaire running for president and saying to you, I really care about the middle class. You have to ask yourself why they put these people in there. Why did they put Obama there? I think Obama was there to strengthen this clash between Islam and America and to weaken America on all fronts. And his goal was to go around the world and become a joke. Now the joke is on us, because they're doing this now in the political arena, and people are buying it. See, people buy this as true. And what I wanted to say that it's not true. It's just a game. And so when you look at it that way, you look at things differently. My idea is this: Trump has been selected years before this. He's a Jesuit. He's, well, not per se, but he works right along with the powers that be. So is Clinton. We know that for a fact. I mean, we've tied, you look at all the people beholden to the Vatican and the Catholic Church in positions of power in our government, and you will see what I'm talking about. So why are they there? What are they doing? Now, does it really matter if Trump gets into office, Clinton gets into office, or none of them do, and there's some kind of big, huge event in October that suspends the election for national security reasons? Obama retains power just like FDR did, and we move into this climate of war. We will move into a climate of war and increased terrorism no matter who gets into office. It does not matter. And I've always said this: your vote doesn't count. There's no reason to vote. These people are playing you for stooges. And I wish there's a lot of people that understand this and they turn it off. Now, that's fine. Turn it right off. But there are millions. Most of your American citizens think this is really a true political system, and there is hope in this political system. I've tried to show in this show that there is no political hope in this country any longer if we continue not to understand the root cause. Now, to transition into Bill Hughes, I want to finish this presentation today. To transition into him, one of the big worries of all American people is this group called ISIS, this terrorist organization that seems to be creating havoc around the world. The question is, where did it come from? Who supports it? And how do they plan on taking this one step farther and creating another 9/11 so they can create a powder keg around the world so that people will bow down to the leaders who say, we will protect you? No one really wants to answer that question. It's tied into drugs. It's tied into a lot of crime. It's tied into a lot of things. But you realize when you watch these candidates, they're never going to get into the real cause of this. They sugarcoat it. ISIS is this group that hates, well, on the face they hate. They're presenting them as hating Christianity, hating America. Oh, on many fronts. We have ISIS saying that. We recently had the actor over in Korea who works for the Vatican as well, in North Korea, stating he wants to annihilate everyone in this country. Nice thoughts, right? So what do we have to do? In this stage play, we have to say, we are going to fight this. We will destroy you if you try to destroy us. So then we have the silent people right now, Russia and China, who also work on this New World Order team, chipping away at the West, so to speak. And then we have our own political leaders here dealing with these issues, which are all contrived, all orchestrated, and they are not. If you realize that we have created ISIS, we created Al Qaeda, we still fund them, and we use Vatican Jesuit order priests to be right down there with them to make sure things go right. And they've done this in the past. Now, I realized terrorism on a regional level when I lived in Italy in the 80s, and most of you people weren't there. This wasn't even on the people weren't even talking about this when I was almost getting blown up there by what they were doing in Italy, basically using it as a testing ground, but also forwarding this terrorist operation, creating this kind of, they have to create these rebel groups, these terrorist groups, they have to fund them first. Then we have to get behind the idea to snuff them out so that they can create chaos. But they have to get money from somewhere. And so that's the key to this. The stage play going on in Washington today is, oh, we got so many heroin addicts in this country. Oh, we got terrorism on the horizon. They're going to take down the grid. They're going to blow up something. They're going to nuke us. We've got people actually playing that role of we are going to protect you when actually behind the scenes they realize that we are creating it over there and that all these people work together, one fighting the other in this kind of stage play they call reality. So when I bring Bill Hughes on, he's one person that looked deeper and sees the root cause, where this money, how this terror, well, how, and that's what I mean. Where did it come? How did they fund the war against communism? Well, they devised a plan that was used in China, and we're going to let Bill talk about it. And the reason I played this show a while back, I believe parts of it, and the reason I'm doing it again is, when you put it on YouTube, or if any of you out there want to connect the Vatican dots here like we do, you're going to get like 50 hits. Bill, this video got 749 hits, so not many people are seeing it. There has to be a way that I've had people on my show talk about how YouTube and Google and all these things, they can basically limit the amount of hits that the ones they want to keep from you. Then you can go to some crazy one about reptilians and get 10 million hits. So the internet isn't all it's cracked up to be when you really want to get to the truth. Oh, you got a lot of information out there, but you got a lot of bad information. And basically, it's your job to weed through it. But when you don't see it, how can you? And that's the real key here. An example is, we all know who Mark Twain is, right? And we all know some of his books, like Huck Finn and that. But did you realize there's a book that they had censored here? You'll never see it. He wrote a critique on King Leopold of Belgium when he basically genocided the Congo. Millions of people were genocided by Belgium because he owned the Congo. And so he wrote a satire about King Leopold and the Western civilization, what they were doing in Africa. Did that book ever get done here? Did you ever read that? I read everything of Twain, but I never did see that one. So if they keep these things from you, how can you ever get to the truth? So that's why I want to play Bill. He'll tell you, as I have on past occasions, why Operation Gladio is important, why they'll never let you get the truth, and why they're going to make people out like me or Bill or others who talk, Tony Alamo, all these other people, as crazy, out of our minds. And that's their strategy. So realize that in this world of fiction that they've created, there are some people trying to break away and tell you things. And many of them hide behind that statement and don't do it. They copy, basically you get these guys on the internet who they tell you, oh, I will get to the truth, but they're working for them as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Most of it bad information. Well, this is good information, and it's a starting point on why we have terrorism, how they fund it, and why the Vatican and all of these leaders around the world are working together. So let's get to Bill Hughes. I left off at about 41 minutes into this, so let's see how far we can get today.
Lost his mind on drugs, and those drugs were provided by the Catholic Intelligence Agency on U.S. soil. Well, now let's think about something else. So they're getting this drug money and it's flowing. They're getting billions and billions of dollars of drug money. Where do you deposit it? Which bank is going to accept it? That's dirty. It's dirty money. I know, I'll give you an example. When I was in Australia, somebody had just sold know, a business or a property or something, and the man had like $10,000 of tithe. And he came to me. He'd been coming. I'd been there like 5 years. He came to me and he said, Bill, I have never helped you. And the meetings I come to every year, I'm so blessed. He said, God has blessed me. Here's some tithe money. Folk, I got to the airport in Brisbane. On the immigration form, it says, do you have $10,000 or more of Australian currency? I thought, well, let me see now. What are my options? I could lie, but that's not right. It's not right. I thought, I'm going to check this box because I don't have anything to hide. I checked it. I did. I had 10,000 and I had some more that others had given to me. Went through customs. Folk, when the custom agent saw that, the bells, it was like New Year's. They were on me like I was honey and they were bees. You know, it was, where did you get that money? I said, sir, somebody sold a property. I'm a minister. Somebody sold a property and gave me this as a donation of tithe money. Where were these meetings held? You know, do you have your credentials? Let me see that you're a minister. Folk, I was a criminal. I was a criminal because I was honest. Because I had honestly reported on that document what was true. I was a criminal. I felt like a criminal. Well, finally, after they interrogated me, they let me through and there was no problem. My point is, how do you go into a Bank of America, SunTrust, wherever you bank, and say, and open up a briefcase and say, here's $100,000 of bills, $100 bills, $100,000. I'd like to deposit it in my account. Folk, you would have every bell in that bank going off. You'd have every police officer in your town showing up outside. They wouldn't know what to do. They would interrogate you no end. But folks, we're not talking about $100,000 in one suitcase. We are talking about billions and billions of dollars. What, monthly? Are you kidding me? They'd have us in jail in a heartbeat. So what do? How many banks in the world will launder dirty money? How many are there? At that time, when this was going on back in the 50s and 60s, there was one bank in the world that accepted that dirty money. But it was on one condition. The condition was that for every dollar that came through, they got 15%. 15%. Now, watch this. Paul Williams' book, Operation Gladio, he says this, page 45. The money had to be channeled through a financial firm that would not be subjected to scrutiny by U.S. Treasury agents. Makes perfect sense. Or international fiscal monitors. Only one such institution possessed such immunity, and it was located in the heart of Vatican City. The bank today remains a sovereign financial agency within a sovereign state. You can't touch it. You can't, nobody can touch the Vatican Bank. It's a sovereign bank in a sovereign country. Can't touch it.
How big is it, Bill? I mean, again, you're talking billions and billions of dollars. How big are the vaults? I mean, help me out here.
What's your name?
Mike.
Mike, you were over there.
Yeah, well, it's easier to see.
Yeah, and you didn't have my glasses. This isn't easy, Mike. Come on. Mike, what they did was, Mike, money comes through there immediately. Okay, number one, there's no paper trail. There's no receipting. Immediately, Mike, it comes through the Vatican, and it's gone. It's gone. Swiss bank accounts, Zurich, Geneva, Bern, the money's in those Swiss bank accounts. And see, legally, now it's clean. See, it went through the Vatican washing machine, and it came out, and it's all clean. It's all clean. See? It cannot be compelled to redress wrongs, not even the worst violations of international law. It cannot be forced to release the source of any deposit. The bank resides under the jurisdiction of the Pope. He owns it, he controls it. And by the way, Paul Williams in his book says that while there are other banks today that will launder dirty money, the Vatican Bank still remains one of the largest dirty money laundering operations in the world. And the Pope owns it and controls it. So all that stuff that we were hearing in the press over the last couple of weeks about this humble, loving man who loves the poor, did you hear that about Pope Francis? Folk, that is just an absolute lie. It's an absolute lie. What's that? Oh, he does, Gail. Oh, yes, he does. Now, you know, there's always been a verse that's puzzled me, but after reading this book, it doesn't puzzle me anymore. Revelation 18:23. Notice, the Bible says, the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. The voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. Do you know the Greek translation of the word sorceries? Pharmakia, from which we get our English word of pharmacy. So the Bible directly connects the drug world, thank you, Sandy. The Bible connects the drug world with the international bankers and Babylon the Great.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now and come right back after 3 minutes on First Amendment Radio. We'll continue this presentation by Bill Hughes, and I think he's hit the nail right on the head when he's citing a lot of good information from this book by Paul Williams, and also then connecting it to the book of Revelations. So who are you going to believe? That's up to you, folks, but this is pretty good stuff. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we are back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on FirstAmendmentRadio.com on this May 11th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm going to have some people from the Alamo Ministry on next week talking about what's going on there, showing you that freedom of religion doesn't exist. Freedom of speech does not exist in this country. I will have on John Levy again, the attorney who fought the Vatican Bank, and he would echo the same statements that Bill just said regarding the Vatican's not being transparent when it comes to the Vatican Bank. I can echo that by being in Rome during the 80s, during one of the biggest Vatican Bank scandals in the history of that church, where people were killed. The Vatican Bank president, Father Marcinkus, was exiled to America. He was indicted by the Italian government. What a sordid, that was incredible. So this is not just theory, folks. I've seen it up close and personal firsthand. And, you know, I never back down from trying to get to the truth on this. And I really get upset sometimes when I see how people get misled. When you see it up close and you live it, you see it, you research it, you find out that all these things these people are saying should give America a different point of view, should give us an idea that we need to go in a different direction. But once you're here in this country, and once you come back from overseas and you actually live here, you realize how they control you through the media, through the internet, through everything, what kids learn in school. And then there are occult strategies coming out in so many different ways when you see what's happening in the political arena when it comes to social issues. Incredible. Well, I better get back to Bill Hughes here, or we will not get a chance to finish this. Back to Bill Hughes.
Now, there you have it, folks, right there. And this, in principle, is what Paul Williams has laid out in detail as to exactly how the drug empires of the world are connected to and controlled by Babylon the Great. Again, Williams, page 46 of his book, he says, because of its clandestine workings, millions can be deposited into the Vatican Bank on a continuous basis, channeled into Swiss bank accounts without the possibility of detection. Disappears. It was the perfect place for the CIA and the Sicilian Mafia to launder their ill-gotten gains of the narcotics trade and for the Roman Church to fund their political mission. According to Moneyval, the Anti-Money Laundering Committee of the Council of Europe, it remains one of the world's leading laundries for dirty cash under Pope Francis. Now you say, but wait a minute, Bill. You connected Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the CIA and the papacy, but you haven't said a word about Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Well, I'm glad you asked that. Good information. None of this speaks of Al-Qaeda. From where did they come? Where does Al-Qaeda come from? Where does ISIS come from? How do they fit into the CIA and the papacy? Well, the Catholic Intelligence Agency used drug money to finance armies to oppose the advances of Russia. Did that ever happen in the Middle East? Did that ever happen in the Middle East? Let's notice. In the mid-1970s, the Shan Plateau of Burma had a severe drought. The Catholic Intelligence Agency needed another place to grow heroin or poppies for heroin. Well, this is the place they found, folk. It's in the Golden Crescent. It's right in the southeast corner of a country that has had a lot of focus in the last 15 years. It's located in Afghanistan. Now, have we ever gone to Afghanistan for any reasons? Do you remember when America ever invaded Afghanistan? When did we do that? Does anybody remember? Come on now. Why did America invade Afghanistan? Why did they do that? They did it. I'll give you a hint. They did it in 2001. Right about October or November. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Jerry. It was after September 11th, wasn't it? Well, when the Shan Plateau in Burma suffered a severe drought in the 1970s, the Catholic Intelligence Agency had to find another place to grow heroin. The Helmand Valley in Afghanistan is where they started growing heroin, poppies to make heroin. But there were problems. They started doing this in the late 70s. The leader of Afghanistan at that time His name was Taraki. He didn't want any poppies grown in the region, and he wanted to modify the strict Muslims in the area that wanted to follow the Quran strictly. Well, that was a problem. So Taraki had to be eliminated. Well, guess what? He was assassinated. Surprise, surprise. Well, Taraki was killed. A man by the name of Hafizullah Amin, a man who was an operative of the Catholic Intelligence Agency. That simply means he was being paid by the Catholic Church, by the CIA. Hafizullah Amin was put into power in 1979. Now follow the time slots here. So 1979, a pro-Catholic intelligence agency man was put into power in Afghanistan. That secured the growing of poppies in Afghanistan, okay? But in 1980, there was another world power that said, we are not going to have a pro-American, pro-CIA man right on our back doorstep. And that country was Russia. And so Russia invaded Afghanistan in 1980. Okay, 1980. For the next 10 years, there was a war. Well, the Soviet Union sent in 100,000 troops into Afghanistan to take over the country. Well, the Catholic Intelligence Agency had a problem. They had to secure the Helmand Valley and those poppy fields. So they had to train Middle Easterners and any Americans that would go fight in the Middle East. They had to raise up groups of men to fight the Russians. Now, guess what the name of one of the groups was that the Catholic Intelligence Agency created to fight against the Russians? Guess what it was called? Al-Qaeda. That's right. Al-Qaeda is an army of men that was created by the Catholic Intelligence Agency. That's who Al-Qaeda is. Say that again? Glad you, yeah. Jerry, when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan in 1980, you can check in your history books, but that's what they did. In 1980, they invaded Afghanistan. In order to stop the Soviet Union and their invasion and to protect the poppies growing in Afghanistan, the Catholic Intelligence Agency started training men throughout the Middle East that would fight the Russians in Afghanistan. One of the groups that they created, the Catholic Intelligence Agency created to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan, was called Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda, folks, is a military group that is operated, funded, and controlled by the Catholic Intelligence Agency. Now, do you know the name of another person whom the Catholic Intelligence Agency trained in the Middle East? His name was Osama bin Laden. That's right, Osama bin Laden. He was a Catholic Intelligence Agency operative. That's who he was, folk. He worked for Rome. He worked for the Vatican. Now here's another, just a thought, and then we'll go right on. See, it wasn't just young men in the Middle East that the Catholic Intelligence Agency trained to fight wars in the Middle East. There were Muslims that came to America, and they began to recruit Americans. Now, there was one particular group of Americans that were especially recruited by the Catholic Intelligence Agency. And it was a group of young men, predominantly young men who had never seen the blessings of living in America because they had never been treated equally with white Americans. And I'm talking about young black men. Young black men were heavily recruited in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And folk, there have been thousands of black Americans who have gone over and fought with their brothers in the Middle East. Now, many and most of these young men that have gone to fight, they have embraced the Islamic religion. Now, I want you to think, and here's your quiz question for this afternoon. Can you think of two very famous professional athletes in the United States in the 1960s and 1970s who converted from Western religion, changed their names, and became Muslims? There you go. There you go. Folk, Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali. I want you to think for a minute. How much influence do you think that the conversion of those two very famous American athletes had on the black community, especially the black community, and the conversion of thousands and thousands of young men who then were converted to Islam and went and fought in Middle Eastern wars? Think about it. The stage was set for a clash between the Soviets and the CIA-led forces that could be trained in Afghanistan. One of the groups of men trained was called Al-Qaeda. And an offshoot of Al-Qaeda that was later formed by the Catholic Intelligence Agency was called ISIS. ISIS, folk, is an arm of Al-Qaeda, which is an arm of the Catholic Intelligence Agency. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are doing the bidding of the Catholic Church today in our world. One of the major leaders of the CIA in Afghanistan was Osama bin Laden. The conflict with the Soviets began in early 1980. Many of the Muslims were trained in the Middle East. Many were trained in America. And because the need for fighters became paramount, many black Americans were recruited by the CIA. The CIA got what it wanted. The Holy War begun. For the next decade, black aid amounting to more than $3 billion would be poured into Afghanistan to support the Holy Warriors, making it the most expensive covert operation in U.S. history. Williams, page 169. Operation Cyclone, this is page 170, was created in this frame to create hundreds of Islamic terror organizations throughout the Central Asian republics. Included in these groups were Al-Qaeda and a host of other groups. Now, folks, Paul Williams brings out in his book that it's not just in the Middle East where Al-Qaeda cells are being trained. It's not just in the Middle East where ISIS cells are being trained. Do you know where they're being trained? Right here in America. For what reason, folk? But to create terror, to bring about what the papacy wants to do in establishing a national Sunday law. That's what they're doing, folks. That's what they're doing. And they're using Al-Qaeda and ISIS today as a front, as a smokescreen, so that the world does not see them behind the scenes. That's what they're doing, folks. That's what they're doing. In order to support the holy war against the Soviets, the papacy needed huge supplies of heroin. The heroin flowing through the Helmand Valley in Afghanistan in the early 80s would amount to about $3 million of heroin per hour. Per hour. Think about how much money the Catholic Church got out of that. 15% at $3 million an hour. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Now, last point, and then we'll close. Now let's bring it right down to our time that we can all relate to. All relate to it. This guy right here, he became the leader of Afghanistan in 1995. His name was Mullah Omar. He ruled in Afghanistan from 1995 to 2001. Now notice these dates, folk, in light of American history and September 11th. He decided January 27 of the year 2000, okay, 2000, he decided that he was going to halt the production of opium poppies in Afghanistan. The money for the Catholic Intelligence Agency, it would disappear. It would be gone. They would have no more money to fund their wars. This sent shockwaves through the Vatican, the CIA, the U.S., and the Mafia drug cartel. Well, who was the enemy now? Well, it was this guy. And he had to be eliminated. But, how are you going to get American people to want to go fight a war in Afghanistan to save the poppy fields? Look at this, folk. Look at this. This is from Williams's book. Thanks to Mullah Omar, this guy right here. What a handsome guy he is. My. When he halted opium production, the harvest for heroin fell from 4,600 tons in 1999 to 81 tons in 2001. But when you're trying to fight wars in Central America, South America, the Middle East, the Far East, that's going to run out awful fast. It's going to run out awful fast. 81 tons from 4,600? What would the Vatican, the CIA, the U.S., and the Mafia do? The mullah had to be removed in a forceful, violent manner or else. So what would these groups do to create support? How do you get Americans to say, yeah, we'll go fight in Afghanistan? For what reason? Why would we go to Afghanistan? So what would be done by the CIA, the United States, the Vatican, and the Mafia. They had to figure out a plan. If we do this, we can drum up support for Americans to be ready to go fight the Taliban in Afghanistan. So what did they dream up? It's called that right there. It's called that right there. And after that happened, Americans went and fought the Taliban in Afghanistan. But that's not why they went there. This week, how many of you remember the very famous professional athlete that gave up like a $3 million contract, and it was all over the paper after September 11th? This man gave up his professional football career to go fight in Afghanistan. Mike, what was his name? Do you remember? Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman. I was talking with a very sincere Seventh-day Adventist Christian man out in California this last week. And he called me because he said, Bill, I know that you were just biting the bit when the Pope was here. And he said, tell me your thoughts. So we started talking. And I started sharing with him a few things from this guy's book right here, Operation Gladio. And I was explaining to him about the poppy fields of Afghanistan. And he stopped, and it was dead silent on the other end of the...
Okay, we're going to have to take a break. I'll finish these thoughts up tomorrow in the beginning of my show regarding Pat Tillman and some other things. Back on the Investigative Journal tomorrow night. Good night.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.